So many years ago, I AP English class, senior year of high school, had this great teacher. Her name's Miss Stokes. I think these days she's a librarian. And just one of these people, you get the impression she could probably be a college professor, but opted because of values, whatever reason in life, to be a high school teacher instead. So that was great. Good teacher. And we had this kid in our class, this guy who's super confused about why he got a B. He was very frustrated. It seemed like he had never got a B before. And so he goes up to Miss Stokes' desk and he says, "How come I got a B? Why did I get a B?" And she's trying to talk to him to understand why his paper isn't very good. And he says, "But I worked really hard on this." And she then has to try to explain that that's not how this works. That's not how anything works. That's not how the world works. Nobody actually cares how hard you work on something. And that's kind of our key message today, that nobody cares how hard you work on something. We had the same thing happen, I remember, some of my time in AAA, where we had a project that came out, and the game's ratings were only kind of so-so. I wasn't on the team. It was another game in the same studio. And I was talking to a coworker, and she said, "Well, yeah, but I mean, when you consider all the challenges that the team went through, I think that seems pretty good." And I had to make the point, like, yeah, but no one outside of the studio cares about those challenges at all. Right? Like, they don't care if the game came out of sprinkling fairy dust, and then there was the game. They don't care what went into it or the difficulties or hurdles involved. They only care about how it affects and relates to them. And so where this was inspired today was, there's a guy who happen to know watches these videos. So I'm not calling you out, man. Love you. I get it. We're in a different headspace right now. But he's trying to get people to check out his game on the basis of he's worked so hard on it. Instead of saying something about the game, instead of saying about how the game would interest people, instead of saying about what it's going to do for them, or helping them align to understanding what it is and whether or not it's for them, he's focused on how hard he worked on it. That's not going to get you any attention, right? I mean, literally, okay, Mother's Day just happened. Your mom may care how hard you worked on something. Your best friend may. At scale, meaning numbers of people it would take to download something or upvote something or give attention or traction or whatever to something to run a business on or otherwise, doesn't exist. Nobody cares how hard you work on something. Now, the upside to this, the other side of that, is that so often people get into this grind where they think that if they just work harder, life will reward them better, because they're working harder. And that is so often not the case. And so this is why it might seem like a harsh message to say, nobody cares how hard you're working, but it's a message that can set people free. When you realize that working harder is quite often, unless it's actually getting better results, not helping anybody and nobody cares, you realize that maybe you can be spending your energy in other or more effective ways, or in a completely different path, or whatever it might be. I mean, a lot of where, and there's many different lives and many different paths in life people take. Certainly not my approach to business. I mean, I'm running a lot of my stuff myself and whatever, so this is not my chosen path. But lots of folks who find a path into business look for how can they reduce how much work they have to do while still delivering value to their customers. And at the end of the day, the customers don't care how much or how little work someone puts into it. They care about what are they getting out of it. Is it helping them in their mission? Is it getting what they need to accomplish? Is it serving their needs? Is it addressing their situations? Is it resolving their disputes, or whatever it might be? And if it's serving their need, our need from the other side as a consumer, we don't actually care, in many cases, how much or how little work that person's putting into it. Does that make sense? That there's this disconnect between the two. And I mention this too because in the case of game development, this is the sort of thing where people often get trapped in feeling like they're making a ton of progress because they're working so hard on something, and the thing they're working on doesn't matter. And I don't mean that their whole game doesn't matter. I don't mean that their efforts don't matter. I mean that the piece that they've chosen to drill and focus those energies into, nobody cares about and will not have an impact on the final result. There's this classic rule, pair-two principle, sometimes called 90-10, sometimes 80-20, sometimes they're 70-30. But it's this vague notion that a large percentage of your result, of people's opinion, of people's reaction to it, comes from a pretty small piece of what you do. That a lot of the pieces are kind of like details that don't get noticed. That's our 90%. And then the 10% is really carrying 90% of the weight of the experience someone's getting out of it, or the value they're getting out of a product, whatever it is. And so we want to be careful about not drilling our work into a dead end, into a deep black hole, into details no one cares about is going to see, when that same energy can be allocated much more beneficially for our players, for our customers, for ourselves, into figuring out where are we getting high yield out of the energy we put into it, and putting more energy in there and taking that energy away from where it didn't matter. Because again, we're not actually being evaluated on how hard we work on things. Stop trying to impress people with how much you're struggling to do something, and focus on what do they need, how can we improve upon that, and you may find maybe it actually takes less of your energy, effort, or struggle than it seemed. So that's the message for today. Not a whole lot more to it. It's Chris Delion here for Gam Keto. Thanks for tuning in. I'll have more videos for y'all soon. Look forward to playing your games in the future. Thanks.